You're listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast. As always, your guy Pat Lane here with my man Matt St. Jean. And Matt, I guess we could say that it wasn't as bad as the Chargers game last year. I guess, right? That game was 6-0. Bailey Zappi in the rain. Remember that one? That was really bad.
I think the only statement I can say there is that more things happened than in that game. I wouldn't say it was better.
Well, at least it wasn't raining, and that, like at the very least, from a fan perspective, the game was a little bit better in that respect. I will tell you, because of coaching, I actually got to the game a little bit late, which is the first time that's really ever. I don't know, first time that's ever happened, but it's the first time it happened in a while, and we actually left early, which we never leave early. And we were just basically like, screw this. Like, they gave up. We're just leaving. Like, I'm not doing this.
When is the last time that you
He did it?
left?
He did it.
Trey McBride?
Trey McBride receiving touchdown. Finally. Sorry. I'm so happy for him. He's got like 900 catches and he finally caught a touchdown pass. Anyways, continue. The last time I left early?
Yeah.
I will tell you the last time I left early. Outside of... Okay, the one time that doesn't count is the 2014 game against the Ravens in the divisional round. I left that game at halftime. There's a known story, a story I've told multiple times before. I don't know if I told it on this podcast or not, but my wife was sick. We had two little kids, like little kids. And so she was like, I'm literally going to throw up. Like, you have to come home and take care of the kids. And so I left early from that game to go home and take care of the children. The last time I left early because of performance and stuff was the Wildcat game against the Miami Dolphins when they busted out the Wildcat for the first time. That was, I think, 2008. I think you're right. So That's the last time I left early from a game. Like we may have left with like a minute left on the clock or something. We usually don't, but we may have left with like a minute left on the clock or something like that.
That doesn't count. We're saying real action left.
Yeah, I'm talking about like we left like at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Like I got home 5 minutes after the game ended. Like that's how early we left. So, Kyrie's in the chat. What's up, Kyrie? How we doing, sir? Hello. Thanks for tuning in. Old man Mob, as always. We appreciate you coming through. Ashton as well, and Nelson, thank you for coming in. We appreciate you guys showing up here.
We can commiserate on here. I should have poured myself a glass of whiskey for this show.
Bro, no kidding, right? Danny asked if anyone's been fired yet. Not yet.
Can I start this off by doing something that I don't know if I have ever done in my life before.
Okay. Oof.
And that is to say, Dan Shaughnessy had something to say that I agreed with. And I think it's the perfect lead-in for this. He tweets out 4:07 p.m. So this is right after the game ends. Quote, Crafts should clean house before next weekend. This is a clown show. Stop scapegoating coordinators. Mayo is a mistake. Wolf is a mistake. Pay for some established bosses and start over. Every minute Kraft's delay is wasted time. I think this might be the most I've ever agreed with that man on anything ever. But I think that perfectly kind of sums up where we are right now.
100%. It really does. And again, it is few and far between when I agree with the curly head boyfriend. But he certainly is right about that. And it's one of those things that you just. It's so frustrating to watch from the outside and really from the inside as well. I mean, we're at the game, like, just, this is a nightmare. Just take, and then again, in the press, the OC gets thrown under the bus. It's like everyone's fault except for Mayo. And you just, and it's over and over and over and over again. And it's so frustrating. And Nelson asked the question, like, who gets most of the blame for this game? And I honestly don't know, because I'll tell you, like, as bad as it was, and I know Josina Anderson, I have a lot of respect for Josina Anderson. She does a lot of good things, but like, she's like staunchly supporting Mayo. And I get that. I understand she has a relationship or whatever, and but I don't know how you can watch this game and think anything other than this was a disaster from Gerard Mayo. From the very first part of it, where he comes out 5 minutes before the game and says that Gibson's going to be our starter, for whatever reason, and then Ramondre starts the game, and it's just like, what are we doing?
Well, and I think so. I don't know if you probably missed this, Pat, because you're not watching the broadcast, but they also talked about how in the broadcast meeting they were told, like, emphatically, that Ramondre was not starting. And I think this is kind of where you have to start talking about this football game, is that, literally from your opening snap on offense, things are disjointed. When the commentators are confused about what your team is doing on literally the first snap of the game, although that you have the ball,
Right.
Things have already gone wrong. In the defense, I thought, Chargers start with the ball. I thought the defense did an okay job on the first series. I thought their plan looked good. Like, they benefited from a couple drops there, but other than that, like, I actually thought the game plan was pretty good, and players weren't perfect in executing it, but I didn't expect them to be. You get the ball, it's like, all right, we figured that Gibson was going to see at least more reps. A year before the game, Gibson starting. The broadcasters say, they told us in the meeting this week, the pre-production meeting, Gibson starting. First play, players come out, Ramondre Stevenson's there.
Right.
And to me, there are 4 possible reasons why this can happen. Reason number 1, Gerard Mayo is just lying because he wants to lie about this. Whether he thinks it's going to be some competitive advantage by saying somebody's starting when they're not, or whatever. He's just saying something that he knows is untrue in the meetings and on the radio before the game. Option number 2 is that he told the offense to start Antonio Gibson instead of Ramondre Stevenson, and Alex Van Pelt overruled him and just did this anyway. Option 3 is that he simply didn't know and thought that this was what was going to happen, but just isn't in touch enough with his offensive coordinator to know what was going to happen. And 4th, and to me the least likely, is that something happened in those, I think because the radio interview was like 90 minutes. I thought it was 90 minutes, but yeah.
No, I know it's not actually 15 minutes, but
something happened immediately before the game that made it so that they had to change their plan. Given that Antonio Gibson said after the game that he was never told anything about starting by the coaches during the week.
That to me is disgusting. That's insane. That to me is completely insane. When and all the reasons, by the way, that you pointed out, I think are valid reasons, right? And I shouldn't say valid reasons. That's not true, but are potential reasons, and they
plausible explanations.
Plausible explanations. That's a good. Thank you. That's a good use of the terminology there. And I think the biggest thing for me is, like, when you look at what he has done, no matter what the situation is, there's a fundamental breakdown in communication on this team. Whether that's the communication from the coaches to the players, whether that's the communication from the players to each other, whether that's the communication between coaches, whether that's the communication from the coaches to the media, right? Like, they just don't know how to communicate with each other. And for Gibson after the game to say that he was never told is insane. That's insane. You're telling me that you told the production meeting guys that Mondre wasn't giving the start. Then you went out and told the radio broadcast Mondre's not getting the start and Gibson's getting the start. And then Gibson is saying after the game, nobody ever told me I was starting. That's insanity. And regardless of who's responsible for that, the main guy that should be responsible for that is Gerard Mayo.
If he's the CEO head coach, his job is to know what's going on and to be the final word here. Like, it's unbelievable to me. And like, I don't like the actual saying of it, like, isn't, the biggest deal, but it's what it reflects underneath.
Yeah.
Something is wrong under the surface if this is what's going on. And I think you look at the sequence of events leading up to this too. Put this in the bigger context of the season. You come out of the bye. At the bye, your job is safe. You go to Arizona, you get blown out. All of a sudden, it's a little bit rocky again. Immediately, it's a little bit rocky again. You go to Buffalo, and I think in some ways, it's your best performance of the season as a head coach. Obviously, a lot goes wrong on the field, but you go in there with a good game plan on both sides of the ball, execute it, and go get a lead early in Buffalo on the road in a game like that.
Right.
And essentially, you stave off their reports. After that game on Sunday, I assumed that Gerard Mayo's job was just safe at that point. He had avoided the collapse. And for everything that has happened this week, all of these self-inflicted wounds, from Keon White talking to the press and saying what he said, to the coach going out and announcing a starting lineup that was incorrect, and then not having an explanation for it after the game. His explanation after the game was saying coach's decision 4 times, and Antonio Gibson doesn't have an explanation for what's going on. So and we're not even talking about the play on the field yet in the coaching, which we're going to get to, but you have essentially just saved your job with the performance that you put together the week before. You've said you've done enough to get to the next season and have the growing and learning that you've talked about all year long.
Yeah.
And then you come out and you either are lying about the starting lineup for no discernible reason to multiple different people, which not only can burn bridges with the media, but you're just misleading your own fans for no reason at all. That's your best case, because the worst case is you don't know what the starting lineup is, even though you're the head coach.
Yeah, I mean, it just, and again, all of those things, and again, are they plausible explanations? Potentially, but they're all terrifying to think that's how it's being run.
Almost every single one of these, like, if he wasn't on the hot seat, any single one of these things could put you on the hot seat. Any of these explanations for what has happened here.
Right.
But he's on the hot seat. And this is, like, in theory, this is a winnable game. What was it? 4.5, 5.5 point favorites, the Chargers?
4.5, I believe. Yeah.
They're at home. The Chargers are not some offensive juggernaut. Like, they're more talented than you. They are better coached than you. But this is a team, I think matchup-wise, you might match up with them well in theory, on paper, coming into it. Right. And you get a couple bounces, a couple things go your way. Not only can you compete with this team, you can beat this team. Like, this is where you show that you built off of last week. The expectation is not that you win. The expectation is that the scoreboard is a 10-point differential or less, I think.
I would agree with that. And I think, too, it should be noted that when Gonzo went out, it was 7-0. And Ladd McConkey had 3 catches for 30 yards at that point. Right? And so, like, that doesn't mean anything. But I will say, like, the score was 7-0 when their best defensive player went out with an injury. Now, again, that doesn't excuse anything that happened on the offensive end. That doesn't say that, they still played terrible defensively and they still lose this game, no matter what. Mm-hmm. But, I can, at least it should be noted, right? I think that Gonzo went out. They were down 7-0. Ladd McConkey had 3 catches for 30 yards. As a matter of fact, he went out on a catch to Ladd McConkey. And so, look, and
adding injury to insult.
Right.
That's how today's game felt.
Yeah, it's not great. Not great. And, and old man Mob mentions that John Jones got cooked for 2 TDs, and it should have been 3 because he was wide open for a third one. And Herbert just missed him. And it's just like the frustrating part for me is that you look around and just think, like, what this is. They have nothing. And there's not a lot of talent, But this is my thing. I talked about it when I aired my grievances this week. Was that it's one thing to not have the players, but when the players aren't in the right spots, when the players are making dumb mental mistakes, we got one game left in the season. We're 16 games in.
Yeah.
They can't be making the same mental mistakes all the time. They can't. And it's just, that's the hard thing for me. And then, to throw the Lad McConkey thing in our face. And it felt, by the way, like, and Jim Harbaugh is 100% like this. It felt personal today. Like that felt very personal, that they were like, they didn't think you were good enough. They traded out of your spot instead of drafting you. Go out there and kill them. Yeah. That feels like a Jim Harbaugh thing to do. And you know what I mean? And hey, look, I mean, that's, good for them for being able to do it. And unfortunately, the Patriots had no answer and couldn't stop them. And, it's just, it's hard. And I think the biggest thing with me, with Mayo, and this is something I've kind of started to come around on. Who did he surround himself with? He surrounded himself with guys that there's no veteran coaching leadership. None. Zero. He's the main guy, but it's almost like he wanted his voice to be the only voice. He didn't want a veteran, professional coach. Donta Hightower, I love Donta Hightower. He's one of my favorite Patriots players of all time, right? Certainly will be a Patriots Hall of Famer. I think just based on what he did in the playoffs and certainly in the Super Bowls, he should be considered for the Football Hall of Fame. I don't think he'll make it, but he should 100% be a Patriots Hall of Famer. He should not be your linebackers coach. He has never coached at any level. He hasn't even been a Pop Warner coach. And now he's a positional coach in the NFL? That's complete insanity. That's insane. And that's part of it for me. Like, have him on the staff. He should be a defensive assistant or like a defensive quality control coach or some bullshit like that. Like, just give him some random job on the defense. That's fine. I got no problem with that. Matthew Slater, it's similar to what Matthew Slater's doing. He's not doing anything. He's just here because he's a good guy to have. And he can mentor the young guys and so on and so forth. Like, that's why he's in the building. Hightower should be the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's like a
role where he's learning how to
100%, right? Because he's not a coach yet. He doesn't know how to do it. And so, it's that type of stuff where it's like, how do we allow that to happen? You look around at all the positional coaches and every single one of them hasn't done it. Tyler Hughes came from Washington, but he wasn't a wide receivers coach. So that's the hard stuff for me, where we allowed him to create this staff of guys that have no experience at anything, and Mayo is the top dog. Fine, but it's like, maybe he shouldn't be. He should have someone helping him out, and he doesn't.
Yeah, and I think it shows. Like, if you look at the strengths and weaknesses of this team, the best coach positional group has been the corners, I would argue.
Yeah,
and that's Mike Pellegrino's group, and he's been with this team for a long time, and he's very good at what he does. And the best coached unit as a whole has been the offense. It hasn't been perfect. It hasn't even been good, I would argue, but it has been the best coached unit. That's the only one of these where you had someone who had experience as a coordinator there. And I wasn't. Here's the thing: I'm not totally opposed to going young and we're going to all grow together in that. But you're so far away from where you need to be. Like, you're just so far away. And if we're counting on them growing into this, how many more years is it going to take? This isn't a college team where we're going to hire some alumni and we're going to give them 4 years and we're going to let them recruit a bunch of players and develop them and see what happens over time. This is the NFL. This is professional football. These are paid veteran players who are experienced and the best at what they do. You can't just you can't have everybody trying to learn on the fly when they're this far away from being where they need to be. So, they clearly internal misjudgment about how good these coaches were actually going to be this season. And again, I don't hate the approach of having young guys who might be less experienced if they're good at what they do. These guys aren't. So,
Right.
And it's, this performance today, you give up 40 points. This is the first time the Patriots have given up 40 points in 2 different home games since 2005, which was he gave up 40 to the Colts, and that was when Manning, finally got his revenge after being beaten up on by the Pats. And that was a very injured Pats team. And the other team was the Chargers. They scored 41 in New England that year. Not Lawrence Maroney. Jesus, LaDainian Tomlinson.
Yeah,
Got
went
to get
off.
my L's mixed up here. He went off in that game, and but that was a very injured Patriots team that year. That still won 10 games. Very different circumstance this year. It's the most points the Chargers have scored in a game this season. Your defense really, you give scores in 7 straight possessions. Probably would have been 8 if there weren't a couple drops on that first possession.
Yep.
And that's just the defense. Offensive, your only score of the game comes on your quarterback being smart, seeing that a penalty flag was thrown, you got a free play, and then his receiver making a play on the ball down the field. That
Just
is
checking.
it. If they don't jump off sides on that, this might be 40-0.
Yeah, 100%. It's crazy. By the way, Show Low Man here mentions Flores would have been a great head coach. Flores is an interesting guy. Again, has a lot of experience. Now, he's already a defensive coordinator in Minnesota, so he wasn't coming here as a defensive coordinator. And he certainly wasn't going to come here, as like a defensive coordinator / like assistant head coach or something like that. But, but I like the idea of somebody like Brian Flores. And I know it didn't really work out in Miami. I wonder if it would have worked out here. But
the stories about Flores and Tua,
which well, and that's the hard thing. But then you go to Minnesota and everybody loves him in Minnesota. So
he's always been good with the defensive guys. That's never been
Right.
an issue. The issue for him in Miami wasn't just like, it was just he didn't treat Tua very well. He clearly just didn't have any respect for him, and he seemed to play favorites with defense over the offense.
Yeah.
Patriots don't need that. And here's like, I said it on Twitter today. I'll say it on here. I'm very much in the clear out the house after this. I don't know. Especially the whole goal was to improve during the season. You had your worst game the entire season in the last meaningful one.
Yeah.
And the second worst game the Patriots have ever had at Gillette Stadium.
I'm
done.
Yeah.
Clear it out.
Right.
When it comes to other coaches who could come in, there are a lot of names that intrigue me. I am not going to get married to someone this early in the process personally because, I don't know, resume only matters so much for a coach. You know who had a great resume as a head coach? Twice, actually. Josh McDaniels.
Yeah.
Like, it matters, but just because you're good at the coordinator level does not make you a good coach.
And that's the thing. Ben Johnson, hot new name, sure, like absolutely. But how will he be as a head coach? Nobody knows. Nobody knows how he'll be as a head coach. Maybe he will be. Maybe he'll be great as a head coach, and he'll be awesome. But we don't know the answer to that question. And Mike Vrabel is the guy that everyone points to, and Peter mentioned it, Ryan mentioned it. Like, Mike Vrabel, I get it, but like at the same time, I don't know. I'm not sure.
And like, I wouldn't be upset if they make a move here, it ends up being Flores or Vrabel.
Right.
I'm not picking those guys just because they have connections to New England. They might be the best option. I'm very open to that. Both of these guys have good track records. Coaching, Vrabel has experience. Like, they both have head coach experience.
Right.
Sometimes guys flame out in their first try, need a second try before they get it. So like, I'm not opposed to them at all. Let's see how they interview. Let's see what their plan would be.
Right.
Other names that actually like could be somewhat interesting. You're gonna hate. I'm gonna say this, but Arthur Smith.
Yeah.
He's done all right for Pittsburgh this year as an offensive coordinator. There's some stylistic similarities. Maybe you hope that he learned something from his first go around. If you want to go someone younger, Jesse Minder, the defensive coordinator for the Chargers. He was with Harbaugh at Michigan. He's kind of like Mike McDonald, who's the coach in Seattle, the old DC for the Ravens. Like very similar stylistically. Young guy, might not be ready for this yet, might be too inexperienced, but I'd want an interview. I think another name to throw out there is Dan Lanning, the Oregon head coach.
Yeah.
Really good program builder out there, really good motivator of men, someone who's developed a program there. I think I'm not closing off any doors at this point in the process. If I'm looking for a new head coach, I'm turning over every stone. I'm interviewing everyone that could be remotely appealing. And we're going to get a bunch of ideas in here and see which ones we think are the best, see who we think is best at executing it, throw out any prior ties to, the team.
That's a good point. It's a good point. So, all right, let's take a break. But after the break, we'll talk more. I don't even want to mention it. He's right, though. He's right. Maybe this is the type of trade the Patriots used to pull off that used to just like we'd laugh at everyone and say, like, look at this and look at what we did. And, like when we traded a first-round pick for Gerard Mayo and Randy Moss, or when we traded a sixth-round pick for, Rob Gronkowski and Julian Edelman. Like, it's these types of picks that we make where we're like, oh, my God, like, look what we did. We traded Cordell Patterson for Jamie Collins, LeGarrette Blount, and Logan Ryan one time. And it's like, we make these are the types of trades that we make, and we're like, oh my God, this is great. LA is just screwing us. Like, just absolutely the fact that we got Polk and Baker and they got Ladd and Tarheeb Still, who, and like he says,
good.
There's a real chance that those guys are first team all rookies. It's tough to take. It's tough to take, but nevertheless. So, all right, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back. So this break, of course, is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. You can make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. Join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. So they also have weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts selected player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Now, this week, I can't remember the one that I read off this week, but I think I know the one I read off this week, I think, is losing. Not great. I had Josh Allen more than 174.5 passing yards, Antonio Gibson more than 8.5 receiving yards, and Chase Brown for more than 27.5 receiving yards. I didn't have that one, but I do have another one that might hit. I got 3 out of 4 already. I just need Jonathan Taylor tomorrow to have more than 110.5 rushing and receiving yards combined. So anyways, it's a ton of fun. Get in there. Get your lineups in. What you're going to do is download the app Prize Picks. You're going to put in the promo code CLNS. You're going to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. You don't have to win your $5 lineup. You just have to play it. So again, download the app Prize Picks. Put in the promo code CLNS. And when you play your first $5 lineup, you will get $50 instantly just for playing your lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right. So, look, and people, by the way, are mentioning that Wolf should go to, and I think that I've come around on that front as well. I understand that. I understand that, it's his first year as the GM and Bill was the guy before that, right? And even though he was the director of scouting or whatever, like Belichick is the one that made all the decisions, right? And that's very well documented. But at the same time, this offseason was so bad and so poor. And some of the decisions that they made were so bad. And to not understand, like I understand that wide receiver was a need. But it's that same type of idea where, like, he was getting Lad was getting a lot of comps like Steve Smith. And I know that's not fair to give someone like Steve, but he looks like a slot receiver, but he played outside receiver for Georgia. He wasn't a slot guy.
Yeah.
And so, I understand, but I also look at it and think you could have had Cooper DeJean at corner, which would have helped you at the corner. Now, maybe he's a slot corner, so maybe you didn't, maybe you felt like we didn't. You could have had Devondre Sweat. You could have had Jared Verse. Not Jared Verse. You could have had Braden Fisk. Yes. You could have had guys like that, and it's like, man, imagine taking Devondre Sweat and putting him in this front seven. They got rid of Lawrence Guy anyways, right? And so, if you knew Lawrence Guy was on his way out, which they probably did, drafting a guy like Sweat would have significantly helped you.
Mm-hmm.
And then take a shot, afterwards. That you go from here. And so, anyways, that's the hard. I understand that. I get it. But I also feel like, we blew it. I mean, there's no other way to look at it, right? Like every other player drafted around that 37 has been pretty good, except for Jalen Polk. And that's the frustrating part.
Well, and here's the thing. It's the process on that pick was clearly iffy in that was definitely a reach.
Right.
But it wasn't a horrendous reach to pick Polk. And he was seen as a higher floor prospect, and to have missed that badly, like if you're missing this badly, this is also when you're coaching and your utilization of him, because he hasn't had more than one catch in a game since the San Francisco game.
Right.
87 yards on the season. Like to miss that badly is some bits bad luck, but that's scouting and coaching together to get 100%. To that point. I'm looking through the draft right here. And so I had mentioned this to you before. One topic for this is that the Patriots did not start Caden Wallace, but did play Caden Wallace. And they just put him in a garbage time. So my first question is, why are you not playing him earlier? Which was answered on his second snap when Junior Colton went right through his chest to the quarterback with essentially no resistance whatsoever. I completely forgot. You know when Junior Colton was taken? This pass rusher linebacker out of Michigan.
The pick after Caden Wallace?
The pick after Caden Wallace. Yeah. Literally the pick after Caden Wallace. Which is just... I mean, this game was just layers of insult and injury stacked on one another. Like, it's so bad.
Yeah. Well, I think, too, like, the part of it for me that's frustrating is that you feel like, at least for me, I feel like when you look at that situation, you're at 34. You don't love any of the wide receivers there. So you trade back and pick up a 4th-round pick and get a 5th-round pick back or something. What did they give up a 5th and move up back? I don't know exactly. I don't know where Still was taken. I think it was the 5th. I think you traded a 2nd. You moved back 3 picks, and then you moved up from like the 4th round from the 5th round to the 4th round or something like that. I don't know.
It was
either way
like that.
Either way.
Yeah, moved back 3 and moved up from 137 to 110.
Right. So like, why? What are we doing? If you liked Polk that much, draft him at 34. To me, that's, I understand. I guess you're moving up 27 slots or whatever, but like, I didn't get it. Now, maybe they couldn't move back further. Maybe they wanted to move back further. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But like, it just, the process of it didn't seem to make much sense. Like either you want to move the guy or you don't. Like that's really kind of the way I look at it, is that like, why are you not, I don't know. It just was stupid to me. It was stupid to me, frankly. And
the way the Wolf Tree, go back to the old Packers method of doing things, they have pretty strict weight cutoffs for what they're going to take at receiver. They pretty much only draft players who are ex-receiver molds. They're not taking, you'll go back 10 years in the NFL, they're not taking anyone under 200 pounds. Now it's about 190. So Ladd McConkey is probably not even on their radar. they wanted one of Liggett or Keon Coleman. We talked about this pre-draft. After those two guys, if you want someone in this size mold, Jalen Polk's the next best guy, and he's someone that's probably not going to go until the end of the second round. So I don't hate the idea of once you can't make that trade-off for a receiver, trying to move back and then taking the guy you like and getting a little extra out of it. But no, the guy has to be good.
Right.
And like Jalen Polk is orders of magnitude less productive this season than N'Keal Harry was as a rookie. N'Keal Harry missed half his rookie year because they put him on IR with the Foxboro flu or whatever at the end of the preseason there. Like, it's kind of astonishing that this is where we've gotten on this. And, he got one target today. Ball hits him in the hands. He got interfered with. So, it's not entirely his fault that he didn't catch it. But, it's a pattern. They throw it up to him, and he's not making catches. And Jalen Baker can't get on the field. And, I think in theory, both of these picks made sense. But if you can't make it work, you can't make it work. I don't blame. I think there are a lot of things this offseason that Elliott Wolf did that I understand the rationale and I'm not too upset about. I wouldn't be upset if they kept Elliott Wolf. I'm not going to be upset if they move on from him either. I think he hasn't done a whole lot this year that tells me that he's going to be a good GM next year. The draft was that bad. Drake May's awesome, so that part's good. You get the credit for that. I think Marcellus Dial, is kind of an unheralded good draft pick here where he was taken. He's been very good on special teams for them.
Yeah.
Who is your next best draft pick?
Right. Layden Robinson, I guess.
Probably.
Who's looked okay at left guard.
You're almost definitely signing someone over him for next year's team.
Right.
And after that, it's probably Jalen Polk.
Yeah, which is insane. And this is the hard stuff for me, right? And I will say, the biggest thing, the way I look at it really, and the Drake May thing, I know people don't want to give Wolf credit for Drake May. He deserves the credit for Drake May because he could have traded out. He could have moved on. He could have moved back to 6. They had offers.
For a tackle.
Could have moved back for 6 and, and hope that Joe Alt fell to him, which of course he wouldn't have. But he could have moved back to 6 and hoped for something else or taken Malik Neighbors there or whatever the case may be. I don't know, right? But he didn't do that. He stayed put at 3 and drafted Drake May. And so he deserves a little bit of credit for that. Now, it's not like he found Drake May and molded him and no one else saw it coming or something stupid like that. No, but he does deserve a little bit of credit for that, right?
Yeah.
But beyond that, and again, you don't like McConkey, fine. They wanted to move back into the first round. They tried to move back into the first round. It didn't happen. Okay. I get it. I understand that those things happen. You need 2 to tango, and they couldn't find a second person to trade with them. But you can't whiff on every single pick. You just can't do it. And you're sitting at the top of the 3rd round, and I think the big thing for me, and here's really my big issue with it. If you look at the end of the 2nd round, right, when you go back and look at the end of the 2nd round, you go back to the 2024 NFL draft, and you just look at, okay, you go to 2024 NFL draft, and you look at the end of the 2nd round. This is the issue for me because the Patriots were at the top of the 3rd round. So sure, at 37, you don't love the tackles on the board. I get it. Fine. I'm on board with you. I totally understand. Okay. Round 3, you have pick 68. It's the 4th pick of the 3rd round. At 62, Roger Rosengarten goes. At 63, Kingsley Suamatiaya goes, however you say his name. Mm-hmm. Roger Rosengarten is playing right tackle for the Baltimore Ravens, doing it extremely well. Blake Fisher goes at 59 to Houston, who was playing a good amount. Patrick Paul goes at 55 to the Dolphins.
I don't think he's
He's
done
been up and
much
down.
for them, but yeah,
Right. But the point is,
good options.
is that as soon as Patrick Paul gets drafted at 55 and then Blake Fisher gets drafted at 59, what are you doing? Why are you sitting there not moving up? At that point, you should have been on the phone with Buffalo. You should have been on the phone with Detroit. You should have been on the phone with Baltimore. Get me up there. I have to take the best tackle available. I don't care who it is. I got to take the best tackle available because you cannot sit here and tell me. You cannot sit here and tell me that Caden Wallace is the best tackle available. That they looked at it at the end of the second round and they said, oh, no. The guy we want is Caden Wallace. That's the guy we're waiting for. Brandon Coleman with the pick before has been playing well. Right? And Brandon Coleman was drafted as a guard. He's been playing tackle for them, right? And so he's been starting for them basically all year long. You can't tell me that Caden Wallace was number one on that board. They had a ton of assets. You could have moved up and you didn't do it. And that to me is more egregious than what they did at the top of the second round. Did they draft the wrong guy? Absolutely, they drafted the wrong guy. But at the very least, they looked at it and said, we don't love the receivers here. We're going to move back a little bit, try to pick something else up, and then draft a guy. Yep. In the third round, he just sat there. Well,
and I think, to be honest, even if the other part of that compounds this is that the guy they take is just not, by basically anyone's board, the best player or best tackle on the board. You look at the guys that go after, one of them, the next tackle off the board goes at 75. Yeah, so 7 picks later to the Bears. That's Karan Namagaji at Yale. He hasn't really done it. He's only played 1 game. He's been hurt. So that we're going to kind of give a wash here. But after that, the next 2 tackles off the board, guys who would have been reaches at 68, but would have been less of a reach than Caden Wallace. Delmar Glaze, or DJ Glaze, out of Maryland. He went to the Raiders. He's been starting since week 3 and has like a 65-ish grade on PFF right now.
Yep.
So that might make him the best offensive lineman on the Patriots.
Absolutely.
And then at 79, Matt Gonsalves of the Colts, who we've talked about on here before, but a guy who coming out, people thought had 4 spot versatility on the line. Left tackle, left guard, right tackle. He could play all 4 spots if needed. He has played, I think, 2 of those spots for the Colts. And he's been up and down. He hasn't been anything fantastic, but he has been a better player than what the Patriots have gotten out of Caden Wallace. And some of this on Wallace is a bit unfair. He hasn't played. He's been injured. He's really only played 2 games this season, if that. He started the Jets game, and he was, in for bits of the 49ers game, in for bits of today's game. I think that's all he's seen the field. So it's not, enough to really judge him yet. And maybe he does come out next year and plays well, and, it does end up looking like a good pick. But shoot, we can't judge off of if spots, things that could happen in the future. We got to judge on what's happened right now. And I didn't expect tackle to be good this year or anything close to that for the Patriots. Trent Brown was their best offensive lineman last year, and he wasn't coming back. They were going to get worse at tackle, barring something crazy happening. But every move they've made here hasn't worked out. Calvin Anderson did not recover to who he was before getting malaria. Okorafor quits on the team. Caden Wallace gets hurt. Valerian Lowe has worked out. He's been a backup level left tackle.
Yep.
He'll be on the roster next year, so that's fine. But he's not a starter. If you had better right tackle play, I think you'd feel better about him. But like Onwenu, he's your guard now. I don't think they're putting him back at tackle after everything that's happened. So
They better not.
I'm like, Stiddy So, he got a couple snaps at tackle and cleanup duty in 1 game. And then Zach Thomas, who they had claimed, who I think is now starting for the Texans.
Yeah, I think so, because they have a billion injuries on the offensive line. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just like they've taken swings, and they've pretty much all been low quality, and they've essentially batting for nothing right now.
I mean,
maybe we could give them a single on Valerian Lowe, maybe, and everything else is just a strikeout, a whiff.
Right. And again, the thing is, they didn't even acquire Valerian Lowe. Valerian Lowe was already on the team, right?
Yeah.
And they've done an okay job at, they've done an okay job at, developing him. But, the hardest part, and here's the hard thing for me. You look across at the Chargers, and what did the Chargers do this offseason? They drafted Joe Alt at number 5. Everyone thought, hey, man, they're going to draft a wide receiver, and so on and so on. And they went through all these things. But, I thought that was smart, right? That was smart for them to do that. They said it starts with the offensive line. So they've invested heavily in the offensive line. Rashawn Slater, first-round pick. Zion Johnson, first-round pick. Joe Alt, first-round pick. They're all studs. All 3 of those guys are studs. Their offensive line is extremely good. They also hit on wide receiver in the second round. That's the thing, is you don't have to. And listen, I'm going to continue to say it. I say it. I'm going to continue to say it. I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. It doesn't matter where you draft the guy. It matters who you draft. Mm-hmm. Is Malik Neighbors a better wide receiver than Ladd McConkey? I believe that he is. Yes. But Ladd McConkey's pretty damn good. And if you can get a starting level player, which McConkey clearly is, in the second round, it doesn't matter that you took him in the second round. It matters that he's a starting level player. Is he better than Keon Coleman? Yes. Is he better than Xavier Legette? Yes. Is he better than Xavier Worthy? I think so. So it's like he got taken in the second round instead of the first, but he looks pretty damn good right now.
I do think one thing with Ladd, I'll give a tiny bit of cover here to the staff, is that he was injured last year,
right,
and didn't finish the season. So he never had a season in college where he even had 800 yards receiving, because the first 2 years he was a role player, and the third year he gets injured.
Right,
he was very efficient, but he just hadn't proven that he could handle the high volume, without getting hurt and everything.
Right.
That's why he's available in the second round. He's going in the first, I think. Otherwise, he's probably going around where Brian Thomas Jr. goes, if I had to guess, kind of in that range. But the other thing with the Chargers, they can afford to use all these first round picks on offensive linemen because they have the quarterback already. So
very true. Yep.
It makes that easier. If the Patriots spend their next 3 first round picks on offensive linemen, we might be saying the same thing about them then.
Yep.
And it's,
which is fair.
The Patriots,
fair
point. The Patriots have tried to invest. They used a first round pick on Cole Strange. That hasn't worked. They used a first round pick on Isaiah Wynn. That didn't work. I think they kind of got unlucky here in that, Bill Belichick basically never drafted a bad offensive lineman until the last couple of years he was here, when they all flamed out all at the same time.
Every single one of them. Yeah.
That's probably just bad luck. You're good for so long, and then you just can't keep the hot streak going. But
you understand why all those offensive linemen were good, right?
Dante Scarnecchi's a big part of that.
Scar is the reason that all those guys were so good.
It's not the Brady dynasty. It's not the Bill dynasty. It's the Dante Scarnecchi dynasty. I'm saying.
Really? That's. and it sounds silly, but it's those guys played well. Look at Marcus Cannon's a great example. Marcus Cannon played well. Scar left for a year. Marcus Cannon looked like he'd never played football before. And then Scar came back, and then Marcus Cannon was pretty good. So it was it's important. That's a valuable thing, right? To have a really good offensive line coach is really important. And I think that, and so that matters. That matters.
Yeah. I will say, if we talk about this year's group, I think Layden Robinson has looked a little bit better with each game. I don't think he's the starting level guard yet, but in the middle of the season, he was quite literally unplayably bad. They had to bench him against the Titans.
Yeah.
Now, if he's your backup left guard, your backup left and right guard going into next season, I think you can live with that. If there's one thing I think you feel better about with the line right now, I think Robinson can be a backup, but Arian Lowe can be a backup. When he was the starter, Ben Brown and Cole Strange I didn't really notice any difference with center play today from what they've
Strange is fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's, I don't think you'd expect anything from him until next year, really, because it takes time to recover from an injury. But I think you have 2 backup level centers there. So when it comes to the depth of your line, I think you're in a better spot now than you were mid-season. But I mean, we're also right now talking about you need a starter at right tackle, a starter at left guard, and a starter at left tackle for next year. And you can you're not going to fix all of that at once. You're just, even if you try to, even if you sign free agents at all three of those spots, odds are somebody's not going to work out quite as well as you think. Or, you're going to draft someone anticipating they're going to be the starter, and it just might not work out because these things aren't sure things. So that's not going to be fixed week 1, 2025. Hopefully it's fixed week 1, 2026. But even that is tough. It's hard to get a good offensive line in the NFL.
Well, I think you can get by with Leighton Robinson at left guard. I think you can.
If you had to for next season and evaluate after,
but
I wouldn't be too mad.
You certainly have to get a left tackle, a starting left tackle, and I think you probably have to get a starting right tackle as well. We'll see what Caden Wallace can do, but he didn't look very good today. Now it was in mop-up duty. Really didn't have a ton. I understand all that stuff, but at a certain point, he's just got to do something, Yeah.
And I think you hope that going into next year that Robinson, Strange, Wallace all improve, and you're hoping, Wallace can be backup level good, Leighton and Robinson can be at least backup, maybe starter level good. You're hoping Strange can be backup, maybe starter level good.
Right.
So, regardless of who's the GM of this team next year, that's going to be fascinating because, what their internal evaluations are. And if there's a coaching change or a GM change or both in the offseason, what gets tough here is that, let's say it's a wholesale change. You're cleaning out the whole organization and starting from scratch. Leighton Robinson wouldn't be drafted by those guys, so they're not going to care.
Right.
If he succeeds, great. You're going to try to make him a good player. But if he fails, it's not on your record.
Correct.
Same for Cole Strange. Same for Caden Wallace. So that's going to impact the way that is approached. And there's scheme fit stuff, and what a hypothetical future coach might want to do, and the way they view this draft class. There's a whole thing right here. So we will see how this goes. I think. Well, now I got to do an ad read. Do we want to do my ad read, and we'll come right back?
Yeah, let's do that because we have to talk about Rodney too, just for a few minutes at least.
Yeah. I just do. Okay. Yeah. I'll
do your ad read, and then we'll
come back.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So I'm here to talk about a little game time sports. I know Christmas has passed, so you may have already done your gift giving, but you still got family left to see. If you're a little bit late with your Christmas gifts, or you got some money for Christmas and you are looking to spend it, you should head over to a Game Time, the best place to get your tickets this holiday season. You're trying to go to a Celtics game or a Bruins game. Hey, they won tonight, with your friends or your family. You want to catch this last Patriots game next Sunday. Maybe, just maybe, you're trying to go to the college football playoff. As that is really ramping up here. Use Game Time Picks. It's going to make it faster and easier to get your tickets. You go to Game Time. You're going to look for the event that you're trying to go to. You're going to hit the Game Time Picks button. That's going to filter out all of the fluff. So it's going to show you only the best deals on the map. It's going to show you only the cheapest tickets so that, you can have the tickets that you were never going to buy filtered out. You can click that all-in pricing button. That's going to make it so the price you see is the price that you're going to pay for those tickets. And then if you click into the tickets, you can see the view that you're going to have from that section. I've used it. I love it. It's very handy. I'm already, scouting some Bruins games to go to in the spring, or maybe when they come here to New York to go to, using it. So, I highly recommend it. I use it myself. Take the guesswork into buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
All right. So what were you going to talk about here?
Yeah, I kind of want to go big picture here.
Yep.
On where we are with the organization and compare to where we were last year.
Mm-hmm.
So last season, we talked about why we both felt the Patriots should move off of Bill Belichick. The answer was, partially to do with Bill Belichick's performance, but not entirely. a big part of it was that we felt it was this offseason, that last offseason was an inflection point for the franchise. You know that you're drafting a quarterback. You know that you're kind of resetting your organizational clock when you do that around the rookie contract your quarterback's going to have. You need to make sure that quarterback is set up to succeed and has the proper coaching. Knowing that Bill Belichick was older and had not been at his best lately, it made sense to start fresh with someone who could be the perfect fit for your quarterback. As we come forward a year, that's essentially the only thing that you have added since that point. And the quarterback is good, which means you're in this really interesting spot. This team is, in a lot of ways, a blank slate. There's not a whole lot of contracts that you're really tied into past next season or the year after. You have a quarterback. You have a corner in Christian Gonzalez. You have hopefully a defensive tackle in Christian Barmore if he's healthy. But, for the most part, the team's a blank slate. You have the quarterback. You have a lot of money. You have high draft picks. Whoever comes in can do whatever they want with it.
Correct.
So in some ways, you're kind of where you were last offseason. It is once again an offseason that's going to mark a big turning point with the franchise because you are presumably going to be committing a very significant amount of money to players that will be 4 or 5 year commitments in all likelihood. You're going to be drafting players, which that's going to be 4-year contracts. And in the case of your first round pick, a 5th-year option on that. And you got right now 5 picks in the top 103, according to Tankathon. So this is a big, if organizations are like a boat and they steer slowly, this is one of the few occasions where you actually get to turn the boat pretty fast in a direction that you want to go in. You do not, from a football perspective or even from a business perspective, want the person who is making these decisions about where you're going to be someone who could be out of a job next year. If you are that close to, if you are thinking about firing them, if you are uncertain about their job performance, you should not have them handling this amount of money, this amount of football assets and draft capital, remaking an organization. Because if they do, and they swing and miss 1 year into all of those commitments, you're going to be firing them.
Yep.
And now you have to bring in someone who has to deal with all of those commitments. You got to be confident in whoever's making this call. So, this isn't saying that they need to move on specifically from anyone in the organization. I've said my piece on the head coach, and I think the coaching staff as a whole, probably some good pieces in there. I wouldn't necessarily get rid of every single person in all of the coaching staff, but generally speaking, I'd clean it out. But when it comes to evaluating your GM, it's got to be somebody who you have full faith in. If you're hesitating, you should be considering other options here. If you're a business, this is a business, and you're about to make business deals that are going to be hundreds of millions of dollars and it tie you into multi-year commitments, you're not going to let a potential lame duck be the one making those calls, even if you have some faith in the lame duck, even if you think the lame duck has done some good things. If that's kind of where you are, you're going to have some kind of a fresh start on it. I hope that is the approach that they were taking to this offseason, because to just go in and say, well, these guys didn't do quite enough to get fired, so we'll let them make these decisions. That's how you end up with where the Bears are right now, where the Bears have been 3 cycles in a row with a rookie quarterback, where you're a year or two in, you're getting rid of people.
Right. Well, it's such a great point because you're right. Like, they have so much money this offseason. But the question is what direction do you want to take the organization in? Do you feel as though, and I was going back and forth with Josina Anderson about that, and she brought up the fact that, the Lions got blown out in their second to last game, or one of their late games against Seattle in their first season. And I'm like, well, that's fine, but they had an identity because their head coach gave them an identity and said, this is what we're going to do. And from day one, that information has come from him. He has been the mouthpiece for the organization from day one. And we laughed at him. Well, fine, right? But he believed in it. The players bought into it. Mm-hmm. If the players didn't buy into it, by now, he'd be fired. So So but they bought into it and they got good players. The players clearly haven't bought into Mayo, obviously. But I also think that there's no real direction, right? And this is, I kind of been noticing this the last few weeks. There's no real direction. And at the same time, right, Mayo doesn't really tell us the whole story. He certainly doesn't give you, he certainly doesn't say something and that's the gospel. That's not how it works here in New England. Yeah. And so it's like, well, how am I supposed to believe that we're going to be good at any time soon? I don't know what your system is going to be. And if, and so is the solution to get rid of AVP? No, I don't think, at least. But is the solution to get rid of just DeMarcus Covington? No, I don't think. But that's the hard stuff for me, is that I don't know where to go from here. But I certainly know that what we are looking at right now isn't working. And I think that your point is so valid in the fact that you can't have – these guys are on the hot seat right now. The national media right now is discussing whether Gerard Mayo should be fired or not. That's the national media.
You didn't get to listen to the broadcast, but NFL Network spent basically the entire 3 hours roasting the Patriots organization.
And that's a standalone game. If you're watching football,
an island game,
everyone's watching that game. Yeah. Everyone. And if that's the case, you're an embarrassment.
Yeah. There's no other way to put it.
And Kraft has to look at that and say, man, this is real bad. This is really bad. And so I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I'm not sure, but I will tell you this. The solution isn't what they've been doing so far. Yeah. And so I like the idea of moving on from just everyone. Just get rid of everyone and just start over. And maybe you screw it up and maybe it doesn't work. And I understand what they were thinking about with Mayo. They were thinking about, we have a young coach that's going to kind of lead us. He's going to kind of make a connection with the players and he's going to lead us into the future and so on and so forth. I think it's very obvious that he doesn't know what he's doing. I think that's very obvious. He's in over his head.
Well, the whole staff. Because I think part of it,
you're right.
If he's going to be the CEO head coach, one of the things he's going to bring to the table is that he's going to be good at hiring people around him. Has he been? Who of the new additions to the coaching staff have we absolutely loved the way that they've handled things?
Right. None. Zero. And it's just, that's real frustrating for me.
Yeah.
To watch that kind of unfold and you just feel like there's nothing that we can do. And again, I feel like Gerard Mayo hired his friends, first of all. But I think the other part of it for me is that it's not just that he hired his friends. It's also the fact that these guys are unproven. We don't know what they can do. Right. And that's a real question mark for the Patriots. What can these guys do? What can they accomplish? We don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to bring up heights, but that's the whole point. Right. And I understand. I do think if you keep Mayo, AVP should stay as well. Unless, and someone brought this up to me today, and I thought this was a good point. Brian Daboll's almost certainly getting fired from New York. Almost certainly. If Brian Daboll gets fired, I might turn around and offer him the OC job and maybe make him like, assistant head coach or something like that. Give him some sort of, title or something just to entice him a little bit more. I do think he's a very good offensive coordinator. I don't think he's a great head coach. I do think he's a very good offensive coordinator. I mean, Jesus, he took them to the playoffs with Daniel freaking Jones at quarterback, right? And he was great for Josh Allen when he was in Buffalo. I think that would be a good fit, right? I'm not hiring him as my head coach, but even if you let Mayo go, I would consider bringing Brian Daboll in. I would prefer Brian Daboll over Josh McDaniels, for instance, as the offensive
Yeah.
coordinator.
No,
And
I agree there.
that's the hard part. And Paul mentions, isn't Mayo kind of like Antonio Pierce? He kind of is. He kind of is like Antonio. I think it's a good way to look at it, that Mayo and Antonio Pierce are very similar in the fact that they were very good linebackers, right? They were very smart. I mean, Mayo was a smart player when he played.
Captain year one.
Right? Like, he really was. But again, to me, it's just like, it's, I don't know. That's,
and that's where, if you're firing Alex Van Pelt, you should also be firing DeMarcus Covington.
Right.
I think only firing.
that doesn't make any sense. That makes
if the
no
only
sense.
thing if the only thing they're doing this offseason is firing Van Pelt, then I think they have entirely lost the plot on what the problems are with this team.
Yeah.
But then if we're firing the two big coordinators,
Then what?
with where we are, why are we married to the head coach at this point?
Right.
Because then you're basically re-rolling the dice, but you're not even looking at the top guys in it. Okay, well, if we're just re-rolling all of the dice, we should be looking at all the options here.
Right.
And that's the thing. I think Mayo is a smart guy. I think he's just too inexperienced right now, and he needs to learn more. And I hope that he can be a good coach in this league. I hope that he can get another opportunity. Pat, I see you reacting to whatever's going on in this game, and I'm behind, so don't spoil it for me.
I won't say anything.
But yeah, I hope it works out for him, but I don't think this is it right now. And I think this is the appropriate time to pull the plug on it.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. Very well said. What an absolutely insane ending. I don't know if he held on to that ball. I think he did.
That's
Holy
insane.
crap. Kyler Murray just threw a fastball. I think he caught it. Kyler Murray just threw a fastball off of Trey McBride's face mask. Just gave him absolutely no chance to catch the ball. Threw it behind him.
Right off the logo on his helmet.
Right off the logo on his helmet, yes. And it popped into the air and just a diving interception in the end zone.
I don't know if that's a catch.
It's awfully close. It's awfully close to a review. I just don't know if it moved in his hands. He clearly gets his hands on it. It obviously hits the ground. The question is, does the ground help him control it?
I'm glad I don't have to make this decision.
Woo! That's a tough one. Anyways, listen, I think for me personally, if it were me making the decision and I were the owner, I would just fire. I'd get rid of everyone. Everyone would be gone.
Well, and I think,
whether it's Vrabel, whether it's Arthur Smith, whether it's whomever it is that you want to bring in, I don't really care. But I want to have a clear plan in place, right? And when you look at it, and here's my big thing, right? I think that the plan in place it's supposed to be a meritocracy, and that's why we're going to re-sign all of these guys. We're going to re-sign all of these guys because we want to get these guys in here. We want to award our good players for their past accomplishments, and that's what we're doing. And if that's the case, I get that. The team sucks right now, and you're not awarding players. It's just and that's kind of where it was. But then it's are you doing that? Have you ever done that? And that's the hard stuff for me, where I'm I don't know if they followed that plan or not.
Yeah. Well, the other thing with this, let's look at the scenario where they get rid of the coordinators, but you keep Mayo and you re-roll everything.
Yep.
Now you're looking at trying to hire offensive and defensive coordinators to a job where the head coach might get fired after the season.
Right.
And all of the stuff with the GM, where the GM could also lose his job after the season, and you're committing all of this money. So now we're very much opening ourselves up to a possibility where in 2026, year 3 of May's rookie contract, the point where he's really supposed to be starting to hit his peak and his value on that deal, you're going to have an entirely new coaching staff.
Yeah.
Having to work with players that they did not sign or draft for the next 2, 3, 4 years because they're going to be in big deals that you're probably not getting out of.
Yeah.
Why are we opening ourselves up to that? Because then if you're learning a system, all right, then you're basically putting yourself in a spot where there's a real chance that this team isn't primed for success until 2027 because there's just so much change and it's turmoil all the time. And this is I am generally speaking not. It's a rookie. You got a rookie quarterback. You want stability. That is incredibly important. That's why I do it now, because this is the opportunity to do it where you can still get 4 years of stability for Drake May on his rookie deal with that 5th-year option after it. If you pull the plug any later than this, you're disrupting it big time. And yeah, I just after today's game, the way they looked, it doesn't.
And again, it's not even just the way they looked. It's the clown show, right? It's the saying that Ramondre's starting, then he doesn't start, then you come out and say it's a coach's decision. What the hell is that? What are you doing? Like, why are we running the same crap back again if this is the same stuff we're going to get? It's stupid. It's dumb. It's annoying. And that's the hard part where it's like, it doesn't even matter. If they win next week, so what? It's against the Bills who don't care. Assuming I imagine they're going to beat the Jets. What difference does it make if they win next week? Who cares? And that's the hard thing for me.
Like this next week, this is going to be like a football game in a liminal space. Like the Bills are locked into a seed. They're not going to play anyone important.
Right.
And the Patriots are probably going to have lame duck head coach. And, Christian Gonzalez concussed today. I'm assuming he's not going to play next week. You're going to have, we'll see if, obviously May got banged up today. He finished the game and everything, but I assume he plays next week, but it's like a 98% chance he plays. So like maybe something happens with that. And you probably want to see young players play. So, we are in a really weird spot here where like the game has to be played for record keeping purposes, but nobody has any vested. Nobody's any interest in it. And this is, you talk about the calamity or catastrophe or whatever language we want to use for what it would take for Mayo to lose his job here. You look at your last 2 games in Gillette Stadium this season. One of them gets put in front of a national audience where the broadcasters roast the team for the entire game, starting from the first snap because the head coach lied to them about who was going to play in the game. Your quarterback gets concussed. Your best defensive player he didn't actually get concussed, but he has to go get checked for one. Your best defensive player gets concussed. You lose the second worst game you've ever lost in the building. The only one worse was the Saints game last year by margin. You got 40 points to a team that hasn't been able to score all year long. And like all of that just to set up a completely meaningless game next week where, how many people are going to show up to that one?
Right. I'll be there.
Like people showed up last year when we all kind of knew it was going to be Belichick's last game, even though it was in bad weather.
Yeah.
He's doing that for Gerard Mayo. And yeah, he's like a great Patriots player, but it is not Bill Belichick. People aren't showing up for that. So after all that, it's going to be probably a mostly empty stadium for a division game against a team that probably is still going to beat you, even though they're going to be starting Mitch Trubisky.
Yep. I mean, which makes it even worse.
Yeah, like it's just.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's hard. It's a difficult situation, obviously, and the Patriots are just a disaster right now. A disaster. All right.
Doesn't get it. Oh, and the other part was that they were chanting to fire the head coach. That was the other part I forgot to mention.
Which they should have been.
Which you could hear on the broadcast. So that's when it comes to embarrassing ownership, there is nothing like it's on-field disaster.
Yeah.
It's drama in the press. It's all of this in front of a nationally televised audience and fans probably not showing up to a game and obvious fan discontent. That's all 4 of the ingredients that you would need right there.
Right. Well, and Rachel just texted the group chat. Right. Keon White's quote looks like Mayo's lost the locker room, and literally every beat writer is calling for him to be fired. Never seen it before. Like we lost every single one of them. Every one of them. Taylor Kyles was saying maybe we should move on. Everyone. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And again, Kyle Duggar, I think he can't cover anyone, right? But like he was now I think that some of him not playing well has to do with what's his name? McCourty not being there. I think if you had a legitimate deep safety that you felt good about, you could play Kyle Duggar at the line. And I think he's a good player when he's at the line. They're not using him correctly right now. That touchdown throw was a gorgeous touchdown throw. It was a beautiful pass.
Yeah.
He didn't start running until the receiver was past him.
Yeah,
it's like
it's too slow to react.
What are we doing, dude? Like, how would you let that happen?
Yeah.
Well, and so that's the hard thing for me.
And I think that's been a common theme for me with Duggar on tape is that he is a very explosive athlete. He can accelerate quickly.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think he plays too slow because he counts on his acceleration to bail him out of it. And it just hasn't been good enough. He's just playing too slow out there.
Right.
But like one of my tweets, I think my very first tweet in game was that I thought they were using Duggar more around the line of scrimmage, and I thought he looked a lot better and a lot more confident.
Yeah.
That lasted like 4 plays. Like the first stop they got on third down, they had Duggar lined up like 25 yards off the line of scrimmage as a free safety.
Yeah.
We got, and I thought their defense.
You should never be doing that.
I think their defense has looked at its best this season when Duggar is the strong safety and Jalen Hawkins is the free safety. I think that has actually worked all right for them. And like I would keep that going. Like if it's kind of I don't remember if I've said this on the show or not, but for moves I would consider in the offseason, I would consider trading or releasing or whatever Jabril Peppers. And we're going to run it back with Duggar because he's going to be here next year with his contract. Get him healthy, play him exclusively at strong safety, let him do one thing and try to excel at one thing. And I think Hawkins has been all right at free safety. Mapu, I think, has shown some good instincts back there. I question some of the change of direction because he's so tall.
Right.
But he has the speed for it. I think he has some good coverage instincts. So, all right. Try Hawkins and Mapu as your free safeties. Try Duggar and Del Pettis and Brendan Schooler as your strong safeties. And try that out. And see. And obviously, if there's a safety that hits the market, that's an obvious upgrade on someone, go sign them. If there's a safety in the draft who you feel is an obvious upgrade or a good addition, go draft them. This doesn't preclude that at all. But I wonder if the answer to the safety problem in New England it might not be a big personnel change. It might be the same personnel used better.
Just used in a better way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
And the coaches right there.
And that's coaching. That's 100% coaching. I mean, all these guys are regressing this year. Why? Why are they all regressing this year? It has to do with the coaching. And that's anyways, it's so frustrating. So, all right. Yes, fire everyone. Move on.
Oh, if there's real quick, are there any names that stand out to you in the coaching staff? As in, like, if we were firing everyone, we might keep this guy.
Mike Pellegrino.
That's
keep Mike Pellegrino at all costs. Don't let him go.
I'd consider Scott Peters as well, just because I don't think he's been anything exceptional, but I also think he's been better than the last couple of guys they've had there, and he's been good enough that I'd be okay giving him another year.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I put it this way. If they are going to stick with a similar running scheme, I think I would keep him for continuity.
Yeah, I get you. The other guy for me, I might keep Jeremy Springer. I kind of like what they've done on special teams. I think I think he's done okay.
Yeah. For the offensive line coach thing, by the way, side note, because Vrabel's with the Browns right now, that's where he's been working. Apparently, he's been like the de facto offensive line coach there since he got there, because they tried to replace Callahan and Peters there, and so let's say if Vrabel was the hire in New England, I wonder if you keep Scott Peters on because of that. There might be a little mutual connection there with Cleveland and the way they want to do things.
That's a good idea.
That's about all. And maybe I think Drew Wilkins as he's been the outside linebackers coach. Their pass rush hasn't been good, but with a lot of like QB contained stuff, I think they've gotten a lot better throughout the season. So and he was highly regarded before this coming in.
Yeah.
So
that's fine. Doug Hyde tweeted out, Patriots have 3 sacks. 3 sacks since week 10.
Since that Bears game.
3 sacks. And their fastest sack in that time was 4.4 seconds. 0 pass rush. 0 pass rush since week 10.
And that's essentially Barmore either not playing or not himself. And
right. Which I get that. I understand that, but at a certain point, like someone's got to do something. You got to scheme something up so someone can get in there and get a free rush on someone. Like you just,
Well, they've tried to blitz with Covington all year. They have tried to blitz and they've never.
It hasn't worked. So either they've schemed it up wrong, or the players maybe the players just suck. I don't know, but like. Someone got to coach it.
I haven't gotten into the weeds with it like you'd have to, but I am going to guess that there is some kind of tendencies thing there that they like to bring certain blitzes at certain times, and opponents know what's coming, and they're not self-scouting well enough to be able to fool teams.
Certainly could be the case because there were multiple times today when the Patriots had one guy or 2 guys, not blocking anyone. And, a free rusher comes in because
Derwin James was just giving him hell.
Yeah. So, and he's tough to, he's hard to block when you block him. If, you get a running back on him, it's over, and so it's not good. But anyways, all right. Anyways, let's get into, just before we go, we have to talk about Rodney Harrison. Rodney Harrison,
Adam Vinatieri. We will have to give out some flowers.
Well, listen, I'm happy about Adam Vinatieri. He should be in the Hall of Fame. He should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think unquestionably should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm happy about that. He's very deserving and should be the guy. Okay. So Adam, for sure. The the Rodney Harrison stuff for me is absolutely disgusting. Just disgusting. There's no other way to put it other than just absolutely disgusting and embarrassing. So Darren Woodson is a finalist. Okay. Let me just read you Darren Woodson's stats. It's not all about stats. Let me just read you his stats. He played 12 seasons for the Cowboys. In those 12 seasons, he had 184 tackles, 11 sacks, 11 fumble recoveries, and 23 interceptions. It's pretty good season. That's a pretty good career, right? 184 tackles, pretty solid. 11 sacks, 11 fumble recoveries, 23 interceptions. That's pretty solid in 12 years. Rodney Harrison played 15 years. He had 477 tackles. 477. Like 477 to 184. Right? Now, that's not 3 times more, but it's certainly 2 times more. And 2.5 times more, for sure. 30.5 sacks to 11. Again, almost 3 times more. 9 fumble recoveries, so 2 less. And 34 interceptions. 11 more interceptions. So half, 1.5 times the interceptions. The fact that Darren Woodson is a finalist for the Hall of Fame and Rodney Harrison is not is an absolute disgusting, just absolutely disgusting, embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And don't give me this HGH bullshit. Like, the only reason he tested positive for HGH is because they were testing for it. Darren Woodson, all those guys have taken all those supplements and all of those things. Everyone is doing it, and they're getting away with it. Rodney didn't and took responsibility for it and took the blame for it. If that's the reason he's not in, like, if some idiot friggin' writer was like, oh, the reason he's not in is because he tested positive for HGH once. Like, are you insane? Are you actually insane? It's the NFL, for Christ's sake. And Pat Stat's totally right. Arguably a Hall of Famer before being a Patriot. Like, And so,
He was
anyways,
just a football player, just very good.
Incredible player.
Well,
Incredible
he had a lot of, I'll say it charitably here, questionable hits.
But here's the thing. But this is the thing that pisses me off.
Yeah.
The best safety of the 80s. The best safety of the 80s. The number one safety of the 80s is Ronnie Lott.
Yeah.
He's the guy that everyone looks at and says, "Oh, this guy was the best safety." Blah, blah, blah. Ronnie Lott was 1,000 times worse than what Rodney Harrison did.
Yeah, no,
but he
it's
played
not
10 years earlier.
I'm not saying that it's a what do you call it? It's a good reason, but I do think that it's a contributing factor here. But yeah, I don't. And even if you don't think that Rodney Harrison should be a Hall of Famer, I'm going to disagree with you there too. But I don't think he's a total lock to be a Hall of Famer with what he's done. He's not a first ballot guy. There's debate around that, and that's fine. To not be a finalist, that is
a joke. That's
crazy to me.
Again, there are two players. There are two players in NFL history that have 30 sacks and 30 interceptions. Two. One of them is Ray Lewis, and one of them is Rodney Harrison, and that's it. Nobody else. Not Ed Reed. Not name the guy. Name the guy. Name the linebacker or safety that was incredible or both. None of them did it. Rodney did it. And again, and DJ pointed out, right? How did Kevin Garnett like cultural impact here? The Patriots won back-to-back Super Bowls. The Patriots had won the Super Bowl in 2001 and had struggled in 2002, but like we're coming back. They signed Rodney. You know, Rodney tells the great Ground Round story and everything like that. But they signed him, and he instantly transformed defense. He was so good. They straight up cut Lawyer Malloy. They just cut him. That's how good he was.
Well, he was a captain year one as a free agent that they brought in.
Yeah.
Like big time culture guy. And, you know, I think in some ways what's happened in New England the last 5 or so years makes you view what he did as even more important when you look at the way the culture degraded when Brady left, because the coach can tell you to do all these things. The coach can tell you what you have to do. It doesn't really matter if you're not working hard enough in practice. It doesn't matter if you're not paying attention to the meetings or studying enough film or putting in the work in the offseason that you need to do. And the way that Brady was the leader on offense for so long, keeping everyone else in line and raising the level of work for everyone across the board because of the attention that he brought to it. Right. That's what Rodney Harrison was on the defensive side of the ball. Just upping the intensity in practice, bringing out to the best in everyone around him so that when you're in games, the games are easier than the practices. He was that kind of guy. He was a football player. He loved the sport, passionate about it, true leader on the field. And like, I just doing that to be the point of a captain of one of the best defenses of the 2000s there, along with all of the other statistical accomplishments that he has. I don't get it, man. Like and it's also like what's astonishing to me, again, in the big picture, is that what the Hall of Fame voters have essentially said here is the Patriots finished to win 6 Super Bowls, having not that many Hall of Fame players on the team.
Right. Yeah. And Tom Brady and Bill Belichick were that good that they didn't need Hall of Fame guys to do it.
And then, like, Ty Law, Willie and Richard Seymour, I think, are in, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not like there's nothing, but like you're telling me they win all these rings and it's just those guys?
Right. And again, it's just, that's the hard stuff for me where it's like, man, like they just, it's so frustrating. So anyways, that's my thing. I just feel like, and Bill Belichick, by the way, loves Rodney Harrison, spends, every chance that he gets to talk about how great Rodney Harrison is. And, it's just, to me, at least, I look at it and just think, I don't understand how you can watch him play and not think he's a Hall of Famer. Again, in 2004, but this is the thing. Fans have hated him forever. In 2004, he was a first-team All-Pro safety. A first-team All-Pro safety and did not get selected to the Pro Bowl. That's complete insanity. He was voted the best strong safety in football and didn't get selected to the Pro Bowl. When 4 strong safeties make it, I guess two from the AFC make it. He was voted the number one in all of football and wasn't a Pro Bowler. It's ridiculous. And so that's the hard stuff for me. I will never respect like at some point there has to be someone that says, okay, sure, we didn't like him. And, maybe he's in media now and he calls out too many people for, I don't know, whatever. But, like, he's that good. His stats are that much better. Like, they put in John Lynch already. He had more tackles, more interceptions, more sacks than John Lynch.
Yep.
Like, he was better in all categories than John Lynch. Right? Like, what are we talking about? Dan Woodson's a finalist. Again, I read you the stats. He's got almost 3 times as many sacks. He's got 1.5 times as many interceptions. He's got almost 3 times as many tackles. Like, what are we even talking about? And so that's like, it's complete and utter insanity if you think that, that is it, and again, Brian Dawkins. Again, Brian Dawkins was in years ago. Years ago, Brian Dawkins made the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What was Brian Dawkins' stats for his career? Right? I'm going to read them to you. He had more tackles. 639 tackles. 26 sacks, 37 interceptions, 19 fumble recoveries. So I can see it. I can see it. It's pretty close. It's pretty close. Right? He ended up playing one more season, and I think Rodney missed chunks of seasons here and there. More tackles, less sacks, more interceptions, more fumble recoveries.
Dawkins, can we talk for a second about how good safety play was in the NFL in the 2000s? Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu, Brian Dawkins, Rodney Harrison.
Right.
Who else is in that? And then the end of the decade is when you got Eric. Oh my goodness, Legion of Boom guys. Cam Chancellor and Right. How am I forgetting the name of the free safety?
Cam
Earl Thomas.
Earl Thomas. Got it.
Yeah, guys like that coming in. Eric Berry and Weddle in that span, and obviously McCourty comes in 2010, like really, really good era for safety.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And Sean Taylor getting mentioned in the chat too. Rest in peace. The short time he did play in the league was a very good player.
I mean, how about Palomaro played 12 years? He had 783 tackles. 700 tackles, dude. And then he also had 12 sacks, and he only had in 32 picks. 12 sacks and 32 picks.
That's crazy low sack total. I would have thought he had way more than that. But
he didn't blitz as much, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. But he also scored 5 defensive touchdowns.
Yeah.
And he had 7 fumble recoveries and 2 touchdowns on 7 fumble recoveries.
These guys were good.
So he was incredible. But again, it's just that's the hard thing for me is where it's like, I get it. You want to put in Polamalu and Ed Reed and Brian Dawkins in before Rodney. I can see the argument. That's fine. But don't sit here and tell me guys like Darren Woodson are better than Rodney Harrison. Like that's embarrassing. Like what are we talking about? And even John Lynch. Like I know people like John Lynch. I get that. But like, golly, man. Like, I don't know. It's just that's so frustrating,
Yeah. Before we wrap up, you want to hear a really funny playoff clinching nugget here?
Let's hear it.
This is for the NFC West. So the Rams can clinch after having won here. The tiebreaker for the NFC West is going to be strength of victory.
Yeah.
So the Rams can clinch.
I saw that, yeah.
By the end of the week, if this is from Tom Pelissero, if the Bills, who play the Jets, the Browns, who play the Dolphins, the Vikings, who play the Packers, the Commanders, who host. Who do they host?
Oh, they host. It's not Philadelphia. It's
going to be on the ticker if we
Atlanta.
Long enough. Oh, Atlanta. Yeah. The 49ers, who host the Lions. If those 5 teams combine for 2.5 wins or more, so 2 wins and a tie, in theory, if all 5 tied, it would do it. If you get at least 2.5 wins in those 5 teams tomorrow and Monday, that would be enough for the Rams to clinch the division before you get to Week 18, when you get a Rams-Seahawks game, which could decide it.
Yeah.
The Bills are playing the Jets. The Bills should win that one. That's at home. The Browns are hosting the Dolphins. You have to like their odds. The Vikings are hosting the Packers. All 5 of these teams are hosting.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
That's funny
So
to think about
some upset victories.
AFC teams impact that. But you're right, strength of schedule. Or strength of victory. You're right.
Yeah,
So.
strength of victory. So weird stuff going on in the NFC West, but this could be the worst Week 18 in recent football history.
It sure could have been. Yeah, sure could be.
Are there Saturday games in Week 18 this year?
Well, they haven't announced Week 18, but there's always Saturday games Week 18.
Because do they do 1, 4, and 8 o'clock on Saturday, or is it just like 4 and 8?
I think there's a few. I think there's like multiple games. I think Saturday and Sunday are both like regular. Like I think there's like multiple games. You know what I mean?
Okay, hold on. Where is it? Okay, in Week 18, 2 games will be played Saturday, the 4:30 and 8 o'clock slots.
Oh, okay.
And then 1 Sunday night game.
Got it.
I don't know if there's going to be 3 meaningful games played next week. They can be like standalone games.
Yeah, I don't know.
Seeding. The
It's
AFC divisions, I think, are wrapped up.
AFC divisions, I believe, are all wrapped up. Yep.
Let me confirm this here.
No, I'm pretty sure because the Bills have clinched, the Ravens have clinched, the Texans have clinched, and the Chiefs have clinched. They've all
I
clinched.
just want to make sure that the Ravens have the Ravens actually clinched over the Steelers for the division. They must have.
The Ravens have clinched a playoff berth. I don't know if they've clinched the division or not. They have clinched a playoff berth. They have not clinched the division yet.
Okay, so in theory, if the Ravens lose and the Steelers win next week, right? But I don't think that. I think that's highly unlikely here. So, like, basically,
the Ravens are playing. The Ravens already beat the Texans, so the Ravens won this week.
The 1 through 4 slots are locked up, basically, unless you get true chaos. And the Steelers in the 5 and the Chargers in the 6 should be basically locked up as well.
But theoretically, though, those 2 games matter still, right? Because depending on the outcome, right, like that makes a difference. You know what I mean?
You need but for Week 18, you would need the 2 AFC North games. It's going to be Browns, Ravens, and the other 2 teams in the division, then the Bengals and the Steelers. Those games will both need to be played at the same time. That Bengals game might need to be played at the same time as the Broncos-Chiefs game.
You would think.
So all 3 of those might end up in the late Sunday slot. I don't know how you find enough games to like fill out a schedule here.
Well, and that's the thing. So the Steelers are playing that night game, right? But again, they're playing that Bengals game, but them getting in depends on the Ravens also losing.
Or for seeding, but then there's the Bengals Broncos part for the 7th seed. So
I wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals or the Broncos played on Saturday. You know what I mean?
You could, in theory, if you wanted, put the 2 AFC North games in the Saturday games.
Right. Yeah.
But then you probably need to play the Bengals Steelers game first, because what you can't have is a scenario where the Ravens win the early Saturday game, so the Steelers like rest their starters for the late game because they're locked into a 5 seed or something. Like, I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna let the NFL handle it because I don't want to.
No, well, so the Rams are playing the Seahawks. That's probably the Sunday night game.
Well, not if
if all those things happen. You're right. That's true.
and it's probably more likely than not to happen.
You would think that those teams should win theoretically.
Yeah, and right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of the 14 playoff teams have already been decided.
Well, and if the Commanders win, they're in.
Okay.
Because they have 10 wins. So, if they win, they get to 11, and no one else can touch them there.
And the Rams can be – so it can be 12 of 14 by the end of this week.
Yeah. And then the Falcons are playing the Panthers and the Bucks then are playing the Saints. But then you would think that those two have to be at the same time. So it's like that's the hard stuff. Is like if the
There's
Falcons
no,
and Bucks were playing, then that would be a Sunday night game, right? But
there's
it's not.
no standalone game that's winner of this is in, or even winner of this game gets the higher seed.
Right.
And
Right.
and the NFL has to find 3 of these games.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what they're going to do.
Just put Pat's Bills 4:00 Saturday so we can end the season early.
Oh my God, I would love that so much. I would love it so much. Just end the damn season. Who cares? Why does it matter? You know. But anyways, all right, let's get the hell out of here.
We're going crazy over here. That's it for 2024 for us. We won't be back until 2025.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next year.
Yeah.
Probably Thursday. Well, it could be Wednesday. I don't know. Either Wednesday or Thursday night.
I think we're doing. No, we said we're going to do Thursday because there's no Thursday night game this week, and Wednesday night is college football playoff. So.
Oh right, you're right. Good point.
So we will be back Thursday next week.
Thursday night sounds great.
Yeah. So everyone enjoy your New Year's celebrations. Stay safe.
Yes. Enjoy
call an Uber. Yes.
For the love of God, just call an Uber.
Yeah.
Yep. So all right. Thanks everyone. Be good to each other and go Pats, I guess.